Just to say a few words up front, thanks everybody for joining us here today. It's always a pleasure to run these seminars. My name is Mike Spicer. I'm an economist. I run a small economic development consultancy called Policy Department. And we've been working with Cambridgeshire Chambers of Commerce for quite a while now in supporting it with its analytical needs around employer-led skills planning. I'm joined today by my associate, Hannah Lazarus. Hannah, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Hannah Lazarus, economic and labour market analyst, working on various projects such as this one and projects that help to develop evidence bases for economic and skills strategies.
Thanks, Hannah. So just a little bit of background before we head into the presentation itself. So we produce regular labour market reports for the Chamber. And it's quite a comprehensive piece of work. We produce it on a quarterly basis. And really what we're trying to do is get an accurate bead on the labour market in this part of the world, in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, as it relates to the Local Skills Improvement Plan, the LSIP. So the reports are focused on employer needs. We gather as much in-depth labour market information as we can, and from every source that we can lay our hands on. It's intended to be useful for anyone, really, any organisation that's actively involved in the skills agenda. So we have a common evidence base, and it complements some of the broader efforts that are going on around local skills improvement plans. So this is an important part of the LSIP process. It makes the information on which things are planned. So if I take us into the key messages for this quarter, I'm going to start by giving you an overview of what we found in this quarter, and then we're going to do some highlights from the report. The report's broken down into sections. We'll bring out the key messages from that, and then against each of those, we'll pull out a chart or two. Now, I'll have to say that the number of slides that we have in this deck is quite large, but that doesn't reflect what we're going to say today. We have a larger slide pack than we present because we know that many of our stakeholders like to be able to peruse the deck at their leisure after the event. So there's a larger amount of material here than we will speak to today, but happy to go back to any slide or even ones we haven't shown in any detail, and we can pick that up in the discussion. So the three key messages from this quarter's report, which was finalised only last week, so it's kind of hot off the press, if you like. The three key messages are that economic conditions are weakening, economic inactivity, that's labour market participation, is going in the wrong direction. And the number of jobs that are posted for recruitment are falling. So not a great trio of messages, I'm afraid. Not the ones we want to hear, but nevertheless, that's what the data tell us. So we're going to unpack that a little bit today, show you what lies behind those three key messages. So if we start with labour market participation, so if you look at the year to September 2024, so we're looking at some of the latest data, the employment rate for our part of the world, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, fell quite sharply, and it reached its lowest rate in 11 years, fell to just over 76%. And this decline was matched in a rise in economic inactivity rather than an increase in unemployment. So I appreciate most people on the call will probably be familiar with those terms, but just to be doubly sure, when we're talking about economic inactivity, we're talking about people who are not actively participating in the labour market. So not just those who aren't in work, but those who aren't looking for work or are able to work. So although the number of people actively looking for work who are out of work, that measure actually fell slightly, that was hugely outweighed by the increase in economic inactivity, and that translates into a decline in the employment rate overall. And this rise in economic inactivity was driven by a rise in the number of students and a rise in the number of individuals with long-term sickness. So the share of working age people who are inactive due to either being a student, to being a student rose by 2.3 percentage points to 7.3%, so quite a big increase. And those inactive due to long-term sickness increased by 1.3 percentage points to 5.6%. So those are the numbers around economic inactivity in employment. But if we're looking at sectors in particular, so in that time period, in that year to September 2024, the services sector, particularly business and professional services, experienced the most significant decline in employment, with a loss of 17,700 people. So that's quite a large number of people over that time period. But on the other hand, public sector services such as public administration, education and health actually saw strong employment growth, and it added just over 15,500 people over the same period. So quite a big change actually in the structure of employment there just in that one year. Job postings data indicated a slowdown in the number of new job vacancies, and we've seen a significant fall in demand for IT occupations, particularly programmers, software development professionals, whose job postings fell by 1,290 compared to a year ago. Again, pretty big numbers these. However, there was also an increase in job postings for transport, mobile machine drivers and operatives, particularly large goods vehicle drivers. So Hannah's going to take us through a few of the details. So Hannah, if you want to take over at this point.
Yeah, okay. So as Mike mentioned, the labour market statistics continue to show a drop in employment over the past year. So in the year to September 2024, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough's employment rate fell from almost 80% to just over 76%, which was the lowest employment rate for 11 years. It remained higher than the national rate, but this fell by just 0.2 percentage points, meaning there's now a narrowest gap with the national average since the earliest year of data in 2005. And if we go on to the economic inactivity slide, so alongside falling employment, we saw higher economic inactivity. So as Mike mentioned, that's those people not in work and not looking for work. So the principal reasons for rising inactivity were an increase in the percentage of students. So that's that light blue line. So that's the principal reason for economic inactivity in this area. And long-term sickness, that's the light orange line. So both of these are now at record rates. On the other hand, the percentage of people that are inactive due to looking after the family or home, that's the dark blue line. This fell to a new record low, and this has been falling since the introduction of 30 hours of funded childcare in 2017. So the increase in long-term sickness, it's a national trend, and it's been matched by a sharp increase in the percentage of working age people claiming incapacity benefits. And the rise in mental health conditions has been a key driver of the increase in inactivity and incapacity benefit claims. And a lot of analysis suggests that there's been a particularly large increase in mental health conditions among young people, particularly young men. And indeed, the latest labour market statistics show that when broken down by age, the biggest increase in economic inactivity in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough has been among 16 to 24-year-olds, which is at a record high rate. And this could be due to the increase in the number of students, but could also be driven by long-term sickness. And when broken down by gender, the biggest increase in inactivity has been among men, which is also now at a record high rate.
Thanks. And we perhaps should say at this point as well, you may have heard quite a lot in the media about concerns that officials have, economists have, about the quality of labour market data, and actually to what extent are some of these numbers being driven by real changes, and how much of it is being driven by changes in sampling and to do with the surveys that underpin these statistics. And we cover that in the report in some detail. And what we try to stress is that in labour market analysis, we always try and take as many sources as we can and bring a picture together rather than focus too much on any individual data source. So if you're interested in that and what it might mean, we cover that in the report in some more detail, and maybe we'll pick that up a little bit in the discussion later. So just moving on, if we look at local jobs market, so The number of VAT or pay-as-you-earn registered jobs increased significantly in 2023, which is a year for which we've got really detailed data, particularly in professional, scientific and technical activities and education. But despite the jobs growth in that year, the number of businesses in the region decreased in 2023, but most sharply in transport and storage. We lost 160 businesses. We lost 90 manufacturing businesses and 90 information and communication businesses. And it's worth pointing out that not all of these are losses as such. You know, they also cover mergers and acquisitions as well. But those are the figures that we saw that went alongside those job numbers. Agri-tech and life sciences experienced strong job growth in that year, while advanced manufacturing materials and digital and IT saw no change in job numbers, at least according to the official data. And there's a number of data sources that we can look at. That's according to the official data. The most recent data show that in the 6 months ending in January of this year, job vacancies fell to 10% below the 6-monthly average for the past 10 years, and 3% below the pre-pandemic 6-monthly average. Vacancies for science, engineering and technology roles have declined significantly. The NHS remained the area's top recruiter by volume between August and January of this year, and they account for nearly 8% of all job postings. So Hannah, if I can take you through to your slide.
Okay, so this shows the number of job postings in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough every 6 months since 2012. So job postings have been on a downward trend for 3 years, and in the year to January 2025, there were just over 65,000 job postings in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and this was 10% below the long-term 6-month average of 72,500 and 3% below the pre-pandemic average of just under 67,000. And in the last 6 months, the highest numbers of job postings continue to be for programmers and software development professionals, followed by sales-related occupations, care workers and home carers, cleaners and domestics, and retail managers. However, job postings fell for most occupations compared to a year ago, particularly for science, research, engineering, and technology professionals, which was driven largely by a fall in demand for programmers and software development professionals. And as Mike noted, the only occupational group to see an increase in job postings was transport and mobile machine drivers and operatives, which was driven by an increase in demand for large goods vehicle drivers. And we've included some more information in the report this quarter about the trend in vacancies for large goods vehicle drivers, showing that job postings have increased by 30% over the past 2 years, compared to a 30% drop in job vacancies across the rest of the labour market. And we include some commentary about reasons for increased demand and recruitment difficulties, such as the ageing workforce and a high rate of retirees, retention problems caused by poor remuneration and working conditions, the loss of EU workers, and also difficulties for young and newly qualified people to enter the sector due to high insurance premiums. And the next couple of slides, we also show that large goods vehicle drivers have recently entered the top 5 most in-demand occupations in the north of the region, so in Fenland, Huntingdonshire and Peterborough.
So now we tackle recruitment difficulties and skill shortages. So one of the things that we unpack in some detail in the report is the intelligence that we have on the amount of time it takes to recruit people into posts. So what we cover in the report is how easy it is for businesses to recruit people, how long it takes. And the average time taken to fill a vacancy has more than doubled from 15 days in early 2019, so before the pandemic, to 35 days in mid-2023. And although it began to fall to 22 days in early 2024, it's since increased to 27 days in the 6 months to January of this year. Recruitment difficulties are highest for estate agents and taxation experts. The median posting durations for those are 33 and 32 days, respectively. And we see other occupations also with high median posting durations, and these include health professionals, process and machine operatives, and care workers. And for those people who've been on these calls before, you'll know that we spent some time over the year thinking about care workers in particular, because that's a long-standing recruitment challenge across the region. We cover that in some detail in the reports. Recruitment difficulties are highest in Fenland and Peterborough, a median posting duration there of 28 days, and South Cambridgeshire has seen the most significant increase in recruitment difficulties over the past year. Local businesses that we talk to and that we engage through the quarterly economic survey and other mechanisms that we've got cite a lack of engineering skills, IT professionals and digital skills as key skills shortages. Other common themes include a lack of soft and transferable skills, which we'll cover in a bit more detail later on this workshop, relevant work experience and suitable training and trainers. The skills gap density is above average in hotels and restaurants. So when we're talking about density, we're talking about areas of particular need. And that's above average in hotels and restaurants, information and communication, wholesale and retail sectors. So Hannah, if I hand over to you.
Okay, so yes, so median posting duration shows how long a job vacancy is active, and it's a long job posting duration is an indicator of recruitment difficulties. So this chart shows median posting duration has been increasing since early 2020, in line with the start of the pandemic. It started to fall a year ago, but has since begun to increase again. And this is likely to be due to employers adopting more rigorous recruitment processes due to economic uncertainty, and perhaps also due to the increase in worker rights announced in the Employment Rights Bill in October. So we've heard at stakeholder events that employers are less willing to take a risk on employing someone in the hope that it works out. And that's not particularly helpful at the moment, when we need to be supporting more inactive people with health conditions, particularly mental health conditions, into work. As Mike noted, across the region, the highest posting duration continued to be for estate agents, with other hard to recruit occupations being a range of health workers, vocational and industrial trainers, manufacturing and transport operatives, care workers, some skilled trades, civil engineers, and some leisure and hospitality occupations. And if we look at recruitment difficulties at local authority level, care workers are a hard to recruit occupation everywhere, with some health occupations being hard to recruit in at least 4 areas.
So education and training. In the report, we unpack some of the metrics that we collect around participation in education and training, apprenticeships. And in 2023-24, the average GCSE attainment 8 scores in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough declined slightly and remained below pre-pandemic levels. The sharpest decline was in Fenland, which had the 5th lowest score across England. There continues to be significant disparity in qualifications attainment across the region. So disadvantaged young people perform particularly poorly, with average attainment 8 scores for those being below the national average in areas outside Cambridge. Progression to higher education reached a new record high in 2022-23, 46.7% of 19-year-olds entering higher education. However, disadvantaged young people from the region were much less likely to progress in this way, just 23.9% compared to their national counterparts. So the national average being a bit higher at 29% for those. Adult, that's 19 plus, further education participation increased for the 4th consecutive year in 2023-24, but it remained over 8% below pre-pandemic levels. Participation particularly low in Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire. Peterborough, the only area with an above rate of further education participation. All age apprenticeship achievements increased in 2023-24, and this was driven by a strong rise in higher apprenticeship achievements. And the number of apprenticeship achievements was almost 15% higher than in 2018-2019, and the highest numbers there in business administration and law, health, public services and care, and engineering and manufacturing technologies. The share of employees receiving on-the-job training or job-related training has fallen to a record low. Again, for those regular visitors to this workshop, you'll know that this is something we've talked about quite a lot in the past and that we cover in some detail in the report, but we can continue to see quite worrying trends there, quite worrying numbers around job-related training. Cambridge and East Cambridgeshire are within the 10% of local authority areas nationally with the lowest rates of employer training. So not great, and something that worries us. And as I say, we cover in some more detail in the report. But Hannah, if I pass over to you.
Yeah, so there's been a range of education data released over the last few months. I'm going to concentrate here on GCSEs because it shows some concerning trends. So this slide shows the provisional GCSE results for 2023-24 in terms of the average attainment 8 score. So the average score in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough was 46.3, which was similar to the national rate of 46. And there continued to be huge disparity within the region. So results continue to be above average in Cambridge, South Cambridgeshire and East Cambridgeshire, with Cambridge having the 9th highest attainment 8 score of almost 300 local authority areas in England. However, scores remained below average elsewhere, particularly Fenland, which had the 5th lowest score in England. It's important to highlight also that disadvantaged children in this region perform more poorly than nationally. So when it comes to non-disadvantaged children, these perform slightly better than average in this region with an attainment 8 score of 50.4, which was slightly above the national score of 50.2. However, when it comes to disadvantaged children, their attainment 8 score in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough was 32.9, which was 5% below the national A8 score for disadvantaged pupils. And at local authority level, Cambridge was the only district with an above average score for disadvantaged pupils. Elsewhere, disadvantaged pupils perform more poorly than across England, particularly in Fenland and East Cambridgeshire, where average attainment 8 scores were 22% and 15% lower than the A8 score for disadvantaged pupils nationally. And in terms of the trend in GCSEs, so in 2022-23-24, the average attainment 8 score was below pre-pandemic levels in this area of the world, and it's fallen particularly for disadvantaged pupils, and at local authority level it's fallen most sharply in Fenland.
Thanks, Hannah. So just moving on to some of our focus areas within the report. So we focus on digital skills, green skills and soft skills. So we'll just say a few words about each of those. Digital skills, really important part of today's labour market. Of course, in this part of the world, 1 in 11 people are employed in digital occupations of one kind or another, which is above the England average of around 1 in 15 workers. And digital employment across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough increased by 14,000 over the past 5 years. And this contrasts with a slight decline in employment overall. So digital employment, if you take a long enough perspective, is a really important part of our labour market. Programmers and software development professionals account for almost 1/3 of all digital workers and are the most in-demand occupation in the region. However, and there's a big kind of but coming, despite strong growth over that longer term, recruitment for digital occupations is now at a record low level as of right now. And job postings for digital occupations being nearly 60% lower than the long-term 6-monthly average. So there is quite a contrast between the longer-term trends and some of the more recent data that we're seeing around digital occupations and the employers that employ them. The IT sector employs the largest number of digital workers, as you might expect, but 70% of the digital workforce is employed in other sectors, particularly in manufacturing, professional, scientific, and technical activities. So there are, of course, companies that specialize in those kind of skills and employing people with those kind of skills, but actually digital skills are used right across our economy. The NHS, University of Cambridge, they're the biggest recruiters of digital workers in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And the most requested digital skills are basic digital skills like Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Office, computer literacy in the general sense, and Microsoft Outlook. So, Hannah, if you take us through this here.
Yeah, so this chart compares the percentage of all job postings that demanded various digital skills over the past 6 months compared to the share of job postings demanding these skills over the past 5 years. So in the 6 months to January 2025, most of these digital skills accounted for lower shares of all job postings than the 5-year average, particularly for software engineering and various programming languages. So this reflects a drop in job postings for programmers and software development professionals. And just 4 skills accounted for higher shares of job postings over the past 6 months, and these were Microsoft Office and Outlook, artificial intelligence, and AutoCAD, which is used in the architecture, engineering, and construction industries. And if we move to the next slide.
Just before we do, Hannah, just to for those who may have picked up, so there are more bars on this chart than there are skills set out on the vertical axis, and that's actually because it's quite difficult to fit them all onto one page. But the report contains the detailed a breakdown of all of this if you want to take a closer look. If anyone picked up on that.
Okay, so yes, this slide shows job postings for digital occupations, and these are currently at a record low. So the blue line shows that job postings for digital occupations have been falling for 3 years, and in the 6 months to January 2025 were at their lowest level since the earliest period of data in 2012. The orange line shows the trend in job postings for all other occupations, and these have also been falling over the past 3 years, but in the 6 months to January 2025, they were just 1% lower than the long-term average level, while job postings for digital occupations were 59% lower than the long-term average.
So on to green skills. So nearly 1 in 3 jobs in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are in occupations that are significantly affected by the transition to a green economy, which is slightly above the national average. And the way that we try to characterise green in this context is in terms of 3 types of impacts on the job market. And these are increased demand jobs. So these are jobs that are in higher demand because of the drive to net zero. So you could imagine, for example, electricians, plumbers, those kind of trades that are involved in retrofitting and upgrading buildings, for example. There are enhanced skills impacts from the green economy. So these are where there's a demand for existing occupations, but where there's a need for an upgrading of skills in those professions. Again, you think about heating engineers, for example. They're in just as high a demand today as they've ever been, but the kind of technologies they're working with are different, and so the skills required to carry out those jobs are evolving quickly. And then we have new and emerging occupations. So these are entirely different types of jobs that have emerged as the country moves towards greater environmental sustainability. So jobs related to new products and services, for instance. Now, the most requested green skills include waste management, water treatment, environmental health and safety, ecology, and electric vehicles. The construction sector has the highest share of workers in green occupations, and over 70% of its workforce are affected by greening initiatives. And clearly, the impact of new building regulations and retrofit programs and all the rest of it are having an impact there. And projections indicate occupations like pipe fitters and gardeners are going to see the fastest growth rates in the green sector in the years to 2031. Green jobs increasingly require a mix of non-green skills too, so project management, data analysis, for instance, alongside more specialised green skills. And the biggest recruiter of workers with green skills over the past 5 years has been the University of Cambridge, followed by Anglian Water, the Environment Agency, the NHS, Mott MacDonald, and the British Antarctic Survey. So if I move us along, Hannah.
Yeah, so this slide shows a trend in job postings requesting green skills. So you can see that job postings requesting green skills, that's the blue line, increased sharply in the 3 years to mid-2023, and also increased between early 2022 and mid-2023 when all other job postings were falling. So that's the orange line. And job postings requesting green skills have since fallen, reflecting the general trend in all job postings, but they remain 13% above their long-term average in the 6 months to January 2025, while all other job postings were 15% below average. And go to slide 47. So this slide shows the occupations with the highest numbers of job postings requesting green skills over the past 5 years. So you can see that engineering occupations feature strongly within the top 15. So other engineering professionals, production and process engineers, engineering technicians, mechanical engineers, and civil engineers.
And then finally, soft skills. So this is the final section before we take a breather for our Q&A. But soft skills, really important part of the skill scene, and all of the evidence points to that. Communication remains the most requested soft skill across all job posting, and it significantly outpaces other skills like management and customer service. If you take a longer term perspective over the past 5 years, all of the top requested skills in the region were so-called soft skills, and of course this highlights just how important they are in the labour market. Key soft skills identified for future employment include collaboration, creative thinking, problem solving, which are critical across various industries. But interestingly, although communication remains a top skill wherever you look in the labour market, certain industries do prioritise different soft skills. So, for example, within manufacturing, leadership is one of the most highly prized of the soft skills, customer service in retail. The ranking of soft skills also varies by local authority area, but communication management and customer service consistently rank as top soft skills.
So the most requested skills in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough over the past 5 years have all been soft skills. So communication has been the most in-demand skill and has been requested more than 4.5 times as much as the most requested specialised skill, which is project management. And when you look at skills in demand over the past 6 months, communication represented a much larger share of all job postings than the 5-year average, suggesting that it's increasing in demand, along with teaching, being detailed orientated, leadership, problem solving, and customer service. And if we go to slide 51, so this slide shows the 25 most requested soft skills in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough job postings over the past 5 years by category of soft skills. So we've grouped these into 5 categories. So we have analytical and creative skills, such as being detailed orientated and problem solving. We have interpersonal skills, such as customer service and teamwork. We've got self-management skills, such as planning and time management. Leadership skills, so management and leadership. And knowledge transfer skills, so teaching, mentorship, and coaching.
Takes us to the end. So that it's been quite a quick canter through